And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight covering the Rowdies the way that I usually do. I am not here with my usual co-host. Instead, I have Nick Porcelli, who has helped us out at RBLR Sports, usually on the writing side. But Nick, thank you for joining us tonight to talk about the Rowdies on our podcast.
Glad to be here, man. I'm excited to talk some soccer.
Yeah, well, there was some soccer to talk about this past weekend. It wasn't just all related to the international game, as much as there was plenty of that going on. The Rowdies also played, and we actually had a good game to discuss. So before we get into all that, Nick, just wanted to ask you, how are you doing on this Tuesday night?
I'm doing great, man. I'm always happy when I get to talk a Rowdies win instead of a Rowdies loss. And, I mean, that was a fun game to watch, so I'm really excited this is my first show, so I'm really excited to be here and just talk some soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get into that then, because there is, as I said, some actual soccer to talk about that wasn't just related to Argentina or Spain or what have you, but there was a very fun game for the Rowdies this past weekend, despite the rain delay. So the Rowdies returned home to Al Lang Stadium and got a 2-0 win out of it versus Orange County. Anyone who knows the Rowdies and Orange County knows that this was a good win to get, because there is something of a rivalry there. There is at least some bad blood, some negative feelings related to past games. Everyone who made a prediction last week on the RBLR Sports podcast did get a point, at least a point. I actually ended up getting 3 points. So it is now closer, with Carlos leading on 9, Eureka on 8, and myself on 7. But this week we have another chance to earn points, and Nick, you will be contributing as the guest spot so that we can see how they do when we preview the next game coming up this weekend versus Indy 11. So that is where we're headed next. Please stay tuned for all of that. Don't forget also that we have a watch party coming up at Berry House this weekend. It is, again, this Saturday. It starts at 6. The game, though, starts at 7. So if you would like to be there and take part in our pregame show, you can do so at 6:15. There will be halftime swag giveaways, beer pitcher specials. And again, this is award-winning beer from the Berry House Beer Company over in Tampa. It is off the Ybor Strip. It's a perfect place to get started for your night. Or if that is not necessarily what you're after, it is a perfect place to hang out when you want to go get dinner before or afterwards, because you should be joining us at the watch party at 7 o'clock. Be there. We will see you at Berry House. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube. That is where you can comment while we are here live. Unfortunately, we cannot really deal with that on Twitter. That's just the way that it's going. Our producer, Eureka, has told me that if you do want to comment, I should direct you to the conversation on YouTube. Please join us on YouTube. We appreciate when you can do that. And as I said, then you can actually contribute as well. And we do appreciate when you do that. If you just want to follow us and you're listening to this podcast when it comes out, please follow us on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, everywhere at RBLR Sports. You know what to do. Nick, let's get started with the quick recap here.
All right. So you mentioned it earlier, kind of a weird one when considering that these two teams had not one, but 2 lengthy delays, thanks to a rain delay that happened, I believe, in the 28th minute. However, this was our first game back after a lengthy, nearly month-long road trip.
Yeah.
And they did not waste time. Cal Jennings put them up 1-0 in the 6th minute, and he would later add a second one later, and I believe I got to look at my notes here. I believe it was the 32nd. Someone correct me if I'm wrong there, but somewhere in the 30th range. And they kind of just would pile it on from there. Obviously, they would have the lengthy rain delay, and obviously it would help when Orange County, they would go down a man after one of their men was booked. And second game in a row, by the way, let's not forget that the Rowdies have gone up a man, unlike last time where some certain members, including a person who may or may not be producing the show, were pretty pissed about how we played with a man having an extra man. This time, having the multi-goal lead, I thought that they kind of, played a little more back because, no need to, put on extra pressure when you're already up by so much. But they still had some great chances, including a shot that hit the post in the 76th minute. But ultimately, the Rowdies, just to put, as I know I'm kind of rambling here, they just were the better team. 21 shots to OC's 5. 8 of theirs were on target. Orange County only had 2 on target. They controlled 57% of their possession. It was, just an overall dominant win. And considering how frustrating that last draw was, it was nice to see him get back in the win column, especially considering Indy 11 tied that's later. So that moves them up into third in the standings.
Yes, that is the biggest thing right now. And we are going to have to take that into even bigger consideration coming up this weekend. As I said, we will be playing Indy 11, and we will have the preview for that coming up a little bit later. And that is where the fact that we were able to jump them is going to really come into play, because obviously we want to keep them below us in the standings and continue to climb ourselves. The quick recap included the lineup of Jordan Farr, Jordan Doherty, Freddie Kleeman, Aaron Guillen, Pacific Nyongabire, Lewis Hilton, Nate Worth, who got his first start ever for the Rowdies. Very big, very cool news right there. Eddie Manjoma, Cal Jennings, Manuel Arteaga, and Josh Perez all played. There were also 2 debuts in this past game for Nick Skubis before he goes off to college. I was told that after the game that this was kind of a sending off for him, and he is a player that has been training with the Rowdies first team for roughly 2 years at this point, usually on an academy basis. He was actually with the first team here on an academy contract, so that makes sense. And he will be going, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Robbie Nielsen said that he will be headed off to Ohio State, Ohio State for certain people. So good stuff for Nick Skubis. The other one was Zane Bubb, another UCF alum who joined the Rowdies, and he made his debut this past weekend. That's perfect for us. There you go. That is perfect for us because we need a lot more depth at the back, and he's a taller player. So if Freddie Kleeman were to go down for any reason, then we have somebody who could actually step into that role and play it relatively well. I think that is another thing to highlight as we go through this. Quick standings update. Lou City and New Mexico both had a bye week. Kind of a little weird, but in so doing, we were able to jump into 11 and get a little bit closer to Louisville City. They remain top of the Eastern Conference in the league overall with 38 points from 18 games played. Charleston had 37 points from their 19, and we have 32. Indy has 31. On the West Coast, New Mexico have 34 points from their 16 games played. Very good return there. And Oakland have somehow shot up to 29 points. They are level with Sacramento, who actually have 2 games in hand. But whatever the tiebreaker is, Oakland is second out west. So very interesting that they have done so well since they actually got rid of their prior coach. But apparently that is what they needed. Orange County are barely in the playoff spot after their loss this past weekend to us. Questions and analysis time. Let's get into that now. The first half, as we said, included a lengthy weather delay, something that the Rowdies had to kind of play around, but we did really well. We noted already Cal Jennings scored a little while after the original kickoff, and then after the rain delay, we came back and Cal Jennings scored only a couple minutes after that. So how did things play out on the field? Nick, what was your perspective on the first half, and how did you see everything going for us?
I saw that they really wasted no time just going out and, I think we've talked a lot about the whole their blood in the water kind of thing. They sensed that they were, like better on offense early, and they took advantage. I really felt like, and you can see this if you ever go back and watch the USL uploaded highlight reel. It is like Rowdy shot after Rowdy shot, and that's not just in the first half, but it's also in the second half, which we'll go over later. But they did what they need to do, and that's they went up early on a shot by Cal Jennings, which, let's kind of be honest, that probably should have been saved. The goalie was right there. He just happened to get nutmegged, but there you go. But this is a team where I feel like if they go up early or like an early shot goes in, they're on, and it's a lot funner to watch them when they play like that compared to, they have chances, but like it takes them forever to score. How many times have we seen them and they scored like maybe in like, let's say the 86th minute, really late. Instead they go on, they score early, and it just seems like at that point you kind of they just keep piling it on, which you would later see with that second Cal Jennings one. So I just think it was a much stronger offensive performance than they had maybe compared to when they were on the road, which obviously makes sense. They're probably happy to be back, but my overall thing is they did what they needed to do. They went up early, and they just kept on the pressure from there.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with all of that. I think that the Rowdies definitely got back to their usual playing style. This was actually something that I brought up with Robbie Nielsen in the post game. There was, of course, we have all seen the Rowdies struggle on the road. We have all seen them particularly struggle on turf. And as much as that is more difficult to play on than a regular grass surface, I'm personally of the opinion that we should be able to handle that, because whether this is good or bad, I would probably argue bad, but it is just the case that in the USL, a good portion of the games that we're going to end up playing will be played on a turf surface. So you just have to be prepared for that. You have to know that if you cannot play the playing style that you're used to, then you have to have some other way to go about things, and you have to have another playing style, I guess. Maybe that's a plan B or even a plan C, depending on how many plans you have. But they need to have something prepared for when they go to these turf surfaces. So to go to your point, though, Nick, they were definitely better on the attacking side. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick figures here. You were already talking about the stats from this game, and I'll reiterate those in a second. But beforehand, I want to go back to the stats from us versus Detroit City. So we had a 66% accurate passing rate when we played, a 73% accuracy rate when we were passing and playing Detroit City. So that's not terrible, but it's not the best. This is where we really had trouble, though. Accurate long balls, 47%, and accurate crosses, 38%. Those are all relatively low numbers, and especially when you consider the way that the Rowdies like to play and how much passing and getting it out wide on the ground and then getting it back into the middle of the field, not the midfield, but the middle of the field is a part of our game. So to go to this one versus Orange County, accurate passing rate up to 83%. So that's a big increase. That is a much better number and something that we would prefer to see every week, of course. Accurate long balls did increase as well, 56%. Probably not the number that they would be hoping for. Of course, I'm sure the number they're hoping for is 100%, but that is usually unrealistic. So 56% is a good improvement. Where we did regress maybe a little bit is accurate crosses at 24%, although I do think that the number of crosses that we got off in this game was still higher. So possibly we ended up with more accurate crosses in this game just because of the number. So yeah, all of those things are very good to highlight. And I think that we were able to play the usual way that we want to play. That is getting the ball on the ground, frequently involving Lewis Hilton, finding one or the other of the fullbacks. In this case, Eddie Manjoma was on the left, so we didn't have a ton of production going down that left side. He is a much more defensive player. And most of it did rely on either Pacific Nyanga-Bire on the right side or going up through the middle and using Cal Jennings and Josh Perez, who would drop deeper, collect the ball, and then turn so that they could face the Orange County goal and then run at the defenders. But yeah, all in all, definitely a lot of positives to come out of that. And I really think Nate Worth did well as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget, for a second, it looked like they nearly could have gone up 3-0, well, 2-0 at the time, because I believe it was Ortega right after the Cal Jennings goal. He looked like he had scored, but unfortunately was called offsides.
Yes, right.
And that's just kind of my other big takeaway. It's another one of those games where it's a 2-0 win, but when you look at like all the great chances they've had, probably could have been a lot more. And it's kind of ironic that one of their goals, which I mentioned earlier, came from but again, I still think the goalie should have made the save, but instead he let it go between his legs. But you know what? As a Rowdies fan, it's kind of nice to see the team have that luck every now and then. So,
yeah, they say that the good teams are the teams that can win even when they're not having a good game. And this was a good game, but a lot of that saying comes from luck. And you could say in this sport, as well as many others, that you create your own luck. And I think the Rowdies really did that a lot better this past weekend because we were the dominant team and we were able to put so many chances on target. As you've already stated, that's probably not a goal that we're going to see very frequently this season. That might be the one time that we see a goalkeeper let it go between their legs like that. But Cal Jennings also pointed out in the after-game press conference that if you don't shoot, you don't even get the chance. So at least you put it on target. You give yourself a chance to put it into the net. And that one happened to actually squeak through. We'll take it, yeah. Folks.
Yeah. And now with that, he is up to 11 goals on the season, which ties him for second most in the league. only behind, and I hope I don't mispronounce this guy's name, Nick Marchanovich of the Charleston Battery, who has an incredible 16 goals, but still, and it's all, but still, he's up there, and also nice to see him score, considering he's been on a bit of a scoreless drought since they went on that long road trip. So nice to see him get back to the scoring ways.
Yeah, the road trip didn't really help a ton of players there, but I'm glad that Cal Jennings, obviously, he was looking to get the hat trick too this past weekend. I think that he was very close a couple of times. It's unfortunate that those didn't go in. You already mentioned Manuel Arteaga's very good chance there, and I think that he was closer on a couple of other occasions, including a free kick that I don't remember exactly when, but it was late on in the game. It was close to stoppage time. So everywhere we piled on Orange County where we could. I think that by the time we got to the second half, because we had already had that long rain delay that was almost as long as a half of soccer in and of itself, Orange County was just kind of over it. They were sick of being there, and it seemed to me at that point like they were a little bit complacent and they were ready to concede more goals. Unfortunately, we did not add to our tally. That's fair enough. We did get the win after all, and 3 points is 3 points. But other than that, in the second half, what did you see, Nick? I thought that we were still playing well, but I don't think that it was quite I don't think that either team had the exact same energy in the second half that they did when we started.
No, and I mean, can you blame them? They probably were thinking by the time, especially later in the second half, they probably thought at that point they'd be in the locker room getting ready to go home. Like long rain delays can do that for people, and it's got to be tough, especially at I love Al Lang, but let's be honest, it's probably not the best place to be chilling for an hour just waiting to get back out on the pitch. And having two lengthy, delays, that's got to take a lot out of you. And not to mention, let's remember, Orange County at that point, for most of the second half, they were playing a man down. So, when you look at it without that context, it just kind of looked like the Rowdies had called off the Dogs, even though they still had some great chances. Like, I think I think they had a shot that like went off the post sometime kind of close to stoppage time. I don't know if it was off a free kick or something.
Yes, that's right.
But, Orange County's like only sign with life was kind of like that one play they had where their shot hit off the post, kind of off of a bad pass, but that was kind of like their only real highlight of the day. But it was really just, again, the Rowdies still being the more dominant team. I mean, really what it showed was like, when you were showing, we were talking earlier about the standings. Rowdies are fighting for a top spot in the conference. And then you have Orange County who's fighting to, just stay in the playoff race. And so those are two different tiers of teams. And you saw that when they played, but so again, it was kind of a repeat in the second half in the sense of the Rowdies were the more dominant team, but it was just less dominant because obviously there was less highlights. And I just think that's just probably because the weather delay and then having to go into halftime probably took, a lot out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I will point out as well that it took something out of the fans when I went back out for after the rain delay, and then in the second half as well. The numbers were significantly lower, and that's unfortunate because I'm sure every player would like to play in front of a full stadium, in front of a full fan base, but it is hard when people have families and such, and they don't know even when the rain delay is going to, or excuse me, it wasn't a rain delay, but the lightning delay, they don't know when that's going to be over. So if your whole family is there, if you have younger kids, I can't imagine just standing in the concourses in those stuffy heat with a bunch of people crowded into your area. I know that my family, we were waiting in an area where the guy in the Dippin' Dots at the booth there, he had his line, and it was, I guess he just didn't want people to stand where his own line for the Dippin' Dots stand would be. And we were there without realizing that we were in what the line actually was. So eventually he was trying to be nice about it, but eventually he made us move, and other people came in and filled afterwards the same area because they didn't realize, just like we did not realize, that that's where the line was. So I can understand why people would definitely want to leave under those circumstances, but it probably did impact things as the game went on.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's ironic. When I was watching the highlights back yesterday to prepare for the show, I saw like at the start that the TV, they put up a graphic just kind of like showing like what the keys for each team were going to be if they wanted to win. And I'm not even kidding. Orange County's one actually said weather the storm. They did not do that.
No, they didn't.
To be fair, I don't think any of us could, because let's just be honest, Al Lang, that is not a comfortable stadium to be stuck in a lightning delay in.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going for it, I would say, but Al Lang's concourses in the middle of July is not the best place to be. And it's definitely understandable. So, in the meantime, though, the Rowdies did what they needed to do to stay warm, to stay ready, and that was something that Cal Jennings also brought up. That I guess someone who went to college in Florida, another hit on UCF right now, but Cal Jennings went there and he said that he had actually experienced many games in his college career where they had lightning delays and they had to do the same thing. You just have to be ready when the delay is actually over. You can go out there, you have to be warm, and you can jump right back into it. They did give them a little bit of a chance to warm back up, so that was good to see. But it probably also meant that a couple more people left at the same time. So fair enough. If they are professional footballers, we should take care of them and let them warm up so that they're not running cold. But it did probably impact the long run of the evening and then the second half overall. But I think that we've covered most of this, Nick. Are there any other bits or pieces you want to hit on before we get to the man of the match here?
No, I think that's pretty much it. We talked about Scuba's debuting. I just want to ask if you know this, because it feels like this year we've seen a lot more call-ups from the academy. Do we know what number he would be? Like how many people have debuted this year, counting him?
I don't know how many people have made their debut. I know that we have 5 academy player signings.
Yeah.
So that would include Christian Ortiz, Nick Scubas, Amari Folks, and they just made a new signing this past weekend that is that's going to be something that we bring up later on. But Christian Ortiz is now on his own full professional contract. That's not an academy contract. So that is something to keep in mind. Like I said, I think Scubas is off to
He's off to Ohio State. Yeah,
he's off to college now. So this new player, Matt DeJesus, we will get into him a little bit later, but Matias DeJesus, excuse me, he will be the 5th academy signing that the Rowdies have made this year. So honestly, pretty good stuff from the Rowdies
that's awesome in that department. Future, man. And I only wanted to bring up the Scubas thing because that him making the debut was actually pretty celebrated here in the Porcelli house. Because true story, he and my younger brother they were classmates together in school. So
nice,
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
My mom just saw that notification. Saw his mom posted that he made his debut on Facebook, and she was real happy. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that is a hell of a way to get a send off before you go to college. You make your professional debut at the USL championship level. Man, I don't know what I was doing around 18, but it sure was not that. So let's get into our man of the match for this one then. I will point out that Cal Jennings and Jordan Doherty are on the USL team of the week. Whether or not that impacted our decisions, who can say? Maybe we'll get to it right now. But Nick, who was your man of the match for this one?
Mr. Cal Jennings. And before someone says it, no, it's not because he's from UCF or because, he was so gracious to allow me and a friend to interview him for my other website that I write for that covers UCF, Black and Gold Banneret. No, it's simply just because all the chances he had, he put in those 2 goals, especially early. And when I was watching, I felt like the offense revolved around him. He very easily could have had a hat trick, the best offensive player. And in my mind, he was probably the biggest key, especially on offense, to them getting the win.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to argue. Like you said, he almost had more than just the 2 goals. And even if one of them was a bit of a fluke, there were plenty of other chances that he made up to at least earn himself a double like that. So well done to Cal Jennings. And I hope that the next time he plays, he does get the hat trick. That would be great. My man of the match, though, is the other USL team of the week player, Jordan Doherty. From his position on the back line, he was still able to create the most chances in this game with 3, and he happened to have the most tackles in this game, also 3. So those are very interesting numbers right there. On the defensive side, there were 2 interceptions, 3 recoveries in addition to those 2 tackles, and he had the aforementioned number of chances that I mentioned, which was 3, and actually I guess was the most in the game. But you also get special consideration when you're a defender from me if there is a clean sheet. Obviously, there was in this one. And I think the only time that Orange County actually looked like they were possibly going to score was that one in the second half where they hit the post. I thought that was going to be a goal, but they kept it out. So fair enough. We keep the clean sheet, and that is good enough for me. They have played their way into the USL team of the week here. So I guess it just kind of makes sense that they would also be our players of the week, but it's not just a coincidence, I guess. We didn't choose it based off of the USL team of the week, but they are the two most highly rated players from this past game because they did all those things and because they had played so well.
Yeah, you basically just picked the best defensive player, and I picked the best offensive player. Nothing more to say about that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I think that we have covered most of the Orange County review that we need to do, but we need to hit on one more thing before we actually get into our preview versus Indy 11. Please, folks, tell me if you haven't heard this, but we have a short notice for a watch party coming up this weekend on Saturday, July 20th. Make sure you get yourself to Berry House off of the Ybor Strip at, like I said, 7 p.m. That's when it starts. For this watch party, we will be playing Indy 11. It is a huge game for us in the standings. We're going to get into that in just a second. So let's cheer on the boys from here in Tampa. Specials, swag giveaways. Of course, you already know that that's coming. Do you want swag? Do you want beer specials? Do you want award-winning beer in those pitchers that they have at Berry House? All of that can be yours at Berry House this weekend at 7 p.m. Please join us for a very good game. Now, let's get into the preview here. Like I said, the Rowdies are playing Indy 11 in Indianapolis, so we will have to watch it from Berry House. Just letting everybody know again. Indy have been in incredible form, although they did draw back-to-back games in the USL against Rhode Island and Loudoun. It should be noted, though, those two games were around a 2-1 win over Atlanta United in the Open Cup. That is obviously the game that they were more focused on over this past 2-week period. Please keep that in mind when you look at their record, because beating Atlanta United is what they were aiming for, and they did it. That's awesome. They also did it in Georgia. They did not even do it on their own home field, so that makes it even better. Alaskan Hunter Sulte should be in net behind Ben Ofemu, Callum Chapman-Page, and Josh O'Brien as the defenders. The recent midfield has been for them a midfield of Ben Mines, Lawrence Wooten, Cam Lindley, and Aiden Stanley, expected behind Douglas Martinez, Sebastian Guenzati, and Augie Williams. Everybody listening probably just heard a name that perked up their ears. Sebastian Guenzati is still with Indy 11. If we remember back to last season when he had actually left the Rowdies for the first time in however long it was, the first game that we played in 2023 was against Indy 11, and Sebastian Guenzati earned a penalty that was not even in the box. So I remember that one fondly, but we all still, of course, love Seba, and I do wish him all of the best in the Open Cup run. I do not wish him all the best this upcoming weekend. I will just point that out. Jack Blake, that's another name that everybody should know. He has 8 goals for Indy 11 on the season, although he has not been starting the last couple of games. So it's a possibility that he is out injured. I have not seen their specific write-ups related to the past couple of games they played. He is ahead of Augie Williams, who has 5 goals, as well as Martinez, Sebastian Guenzati again, and Elliot Collier, who all have 3. Aiden Stanley is probably one of the most important players on this team. He has 7 assists. He also has the most big chances created and the most regular chances created. So obviously, we need to keep an eye out on this guy. Both of their wingbacks are going to be important, not just Stanley, but also Ben Mines on the right side. And we can expect a roughly similar 3-4-3 lineup. This game is very important, as I said, following our jumping of Indy in the Eastern Conference standings. We are above them literally by 1 point. We have played the same number of games as them. So if we can keep them from winning this game, we will at least stay ahead of them, even if we don't necessarily win ourselves and get closer to Charleston and Lou City ahead of us. We have a lot more probably to get into here, but please don't forget, everybody, we are playing this game in Indianapolis. That means that we are playing at their home stadium, and we are playing on turf. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. Nick, what is your preview for the Indy 11 game?
I am very interested to see how this plays out, for the simple fact that these are two, in my opinion, very, very similar teams, which probably explains why the difference in the standings is a single point. Obviously, I think in terms, and it sounds basic, but we're on the road on turf, so Indy is going to have that slight advantage, and especially considering they recently just upset an MLS team and are currently in the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup. That is a team that you do not take lightly, and I will say this, it is a big step up in competition from Orange County. So, in my mind, this is a test for the Rowdies to see if that performance was kind of fluky because of them being at home and who they were playing against, or are they, or can they sustain that? In my mind, this is a good playoff test because now you're going to have to face this. For all we know, this very well could be a team that we could see in the playoffs come that time. So, in my opinion, this is probably one of their most important matches of the year. Just kind of like, so I'm just interested to see how they come out and play. I think that I think we'll go into predictions later, but I think the Rowdies are going to be able to come out on top, but it's not going to be easy. Quite frankly, in this one, I'm expecting a dogfight.
Yes. Yeah. I am of a similar mindset to you with that. As we've said, they do play a relatively similar style. There are going to be changes here and there will also probably be changes to the lineup that impact things. So we need to keep that in mind once we get out onto the field in Indianapolis. But at the same time, we do have the ability to beat this team if we play the way that we know we can. So the problem that I foresee, of course, is when we have these games on turf, this is something that has been a real big problem for us, something that we've already talked about. In the last couple of games before Orange County, everybody knows that we have had some struggles here. And honestly, getting into the Orange County game, I wanted to see exactly how the Rowdies did. Now, they had been building up to that all week. They were so happy to be back on normal surfaces and in normal confines around all of the fans who actually want to see the green and gold win. So that's all very important. Of course, this is going to be the opposite here, and they're going to have to deal with a pretty good fan base in Indy 11. Let's not get into the whole MLS deal going on in Indianapolis right now. But one of the reasons that I guess MLS is so keen on that market is because there is a pretty good fan base there. I don't know how many of them would switch over to an MLS side if that came about, but again, that's not what we're here to talk about at the moment. We're here to talk about the Indy 11 team that's in front of us. It's going to be unfriendly and it's going to be rougher to play there. So how are we going to do in terms of what we had already talked about when I brought up the Robbie Nielsen interview? He says that frequently when they play on turf, they have to change up their style. They have to play something else. So if they have their plan A, that works. We know that that still works. It wasn't just a problem, I guess, with this team that was larger than that. We know that we can beat people at home playing the way that we want to play. Now we got to go do the same thing again against a very good team in Indy 11. If we were, just as you said, Nick, going to see them in the playoffs later on, possibly, let's say they end ahead of us, then they would host and we would have to go and play them there. I would like to avoid that, obviously, for all of the problems that we've had getting into just this portion of the season. But let's just hope that if we do get this test in the future, what we are dealing with this weekend, what we see from the Rowdies this weekend, is a positive way to go into the future about anytime we go up on another turf surface here. I think that there is going to be, it's going to be us not being able to play the ball on the ground the way that we want, because that is apparently, according to Robbie Nielsen, one of the bigger problems about playing on these surfaces. And I totally understand that the ball does not bounce the same. But we need to know that this team is able to handle that. And we need to know that this team is able to overcome that if they're going to be a team that is actually able to challenge throughout the playoffs, that is actually able to challenge for, let's say, trophies down the line. I would obviously love that as a Rowdies fan. And yeah, this is going to be a big test. And I think the word that you used, dogfight, is perfect.
Yeah. One important thing I want to note too, when it comes to Indy playing at home, though, while good, the record isn't eye-popping. I believe they are 4-3-2 at home. So yeah, so they only had 2 matches where they didn't come away with the points. But their win to draw ratio is not that large, and it shows that a lot of teams can come in there and kind of compete. And I think we're going to see that when they play. Like, going into this, I'm going to be honest. If the Rowdies don't at least come away with a single point, that's not good in my opinion. They should at the very least be able to come away with a single point, if not a win.
Yeah, if the Rowdies are going to approach this game, as we've already said, they need to have something that is going to be different for them. They need to have a different lineup, maybe a different game plan, a different approach, all of those things probably. But what I would like to see is if the Rowdies think that this is going to be such a difficult game because we are going away to this turf surface and because we are playing a team that is probably in really good form at the moment, despite the 2 draws that they've had in their last USL games, then I would like to see us maybe approach this in a more defensive way. We need to say, let's sit back. We'll be the ones to allow Indy 11 to do all of the pressing and all the attacking that they want to do, and we will try to catch them on the counter. We probably have the quality to handle that and to get away with it too. So if that's what we need to do to win this game, if that's what we need to do to get a point out of this game, we should at least try to keep Indy 11 beneath us in the standings, and we can stay in 3rd place, live to fight another day against the likes of Charleston or Louisville City, or maybe even New Mexico if it ultimately came to that way down the line in the playoffs. But yeah, there are a lot of things to take into consideration here, and it'll be very nice to be Sebastian Guanzotti, but I would just point out one more time that I do not wish him well in this particular game. I would like for the Rowdies to be the ones who come out and show that we have all of the facets of USL Championship play covered, and that includes these games.
Same here. I'm expecting, I'm going to go ahead and guess that for the first, let's say 15 or maybe 10 minutes, it's going to be a very each team feeling each other out kind of thing. And after that, then I think the team will decide to go with either the Rowdies saying, all right, let's play back like you were saying, or okay, let's see if we can try to attack. But I'm expecting the game to start off slow, and then as it goes on to really crescendo and turn into the dogfight that I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, that is a definite possibility. I imagine that Indy 11 will have the upper hand, at least in those first couple of minutes there, while they know what the surface is like and play on it all the time. So that would be the only thing that I would possibly have in mind for arguing that. But I do think that the Rowdies will at least be able to shut up shop for those first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes when you're getting yourself into a game, when you're getting yourself up to 95, 96, 97%, focused, dialed in, all that stuff, then you can at least sit back and make sure that the other team does not score on you. So let's get through that much first. Nick, do we have anything else that you want to go over before we jump into the predictions here?
Who, in your opinion, do you think are the keys to the Rowdies, at the very least, earning a point, if not a win in this game? We can go into predictions afterwards, but who needs to show up in this game, in your mind?
Yeah, well, so this is, I guess, a bit of an issue that will play out also on the injury table. Do you call it a table? But with Blake Bodley having been in and out recently, then our left side is not entirely determined at the moment. Eddie Manjoma has been filling in there, and he has been doing well. But as I noted, he is a little bit more defensive when he's on the left side because he is naturally right-footed, of course. So that doesn't allow him the best opportunities to get himself down the wing and then get a cross back into the box, just because he might not trust himself as much to get the cross in as he would from the right, of course. So if Blake Bodley is back from his injury, then that would, of course, impact things and allow us to consider what the right side would look like. If he's not, then I think we can all expect Pacific Nyongabire to continue to start at the right and Eddie Manjoma to continue to start at the left. Barring any type of lineup or formational change, I guess I should say, barring that, the only thing that I would point out is if we do have Blake Bodley back, it might be worth it to put Eddie Manjoma back on the right side simply because he is a more defensive option than Pacific Nyongabire. And specifically, if we're talking about Indy 11, their left wing back, not their left back, but Aiden Stanley, as I've highlighted, 7 assists on the season. That's a very high number for a more defensive player. He also leads the team again in big chances and regular chances created. So this is the guy that we really need to watch out for in terms of the danger man. Now, Cam Lindley is the player that is in the midfield that is kind of like our Lewis Hilton. They're actually relatively similar players. If we can shut him down when we don't have possession and we are the team that's pressing, that will be good. But Aiden Stanley is the one that we really need to watch out for. And that's why I'm kind of thinking that a more defensive-minded option at the right wing back spot might be better. So this will, of course, depend on Blake Bodley being back, unless we want to put somebody else in the left wing back spot. I would be surprised if it's anyone other than Blake Bodley or Eddie Manjoma. But otherwise, yeah, if we can shut Lindley down, that's good. If we can shut Aiden Stanley down, that's going to be all the better.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I mean, again, the UCF fan to say Cal Jennings, our star offensive guy, he's got to show up. But to be honest with you, I agree with your whole. This is really about the team's defensive performance. So everyone you just listed, I think they're the most important people. And I would also add Farr, the man in net, on there because something tells me, especially considering they're on the road and this team's history on turf, that we're going to need him to make a couple really huge saves for us in this game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if either he or the post being very important to us is the way that we actually get out of Indy 11 with a point. So we will see how it goes. Now, let's jump into the predictions here. And I will just say Carlos has sent us his prediction for the upcoming game. It is a 1-1 draw. Eureka, the producer, has put in his as well, and he has predicted a 1-0 win. So that is very positive from Eureka. Nick, I will turn it over to you before I go into mine.
Not copying Carlos, but I'm going to agree with him, and I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I just feel like the team is, like you said, going to play a little more defensively, and they're so even, though. I think both teams are going to break through early, and then maybe they'll trade some chances, but eventually it's going to turn into one team kind of playing a little more defense than the other, being a little more conservative, not taking as many chances. And I think that's just going to even it out, and the Rowdies will, at the very least, just be happy to take 1 point on the road. So I think that's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if that's the way that it ultimately turns out. I probably wouldn't be too upset. Of course, we can see what the circumstances turn into, and if the Rowdies get another opposition player sent off and they don't go and win, then I might be feeling a little differently. Mm-hmm. At the moment, though, I will probably look at the form of Indy 11 recently and say that is where I'm leaning. And with that, I will put in my prediction for a 2-1 loss. That is not what I would like to see, but for the sake of my own gathering points, which I have actually done recently, despite myself, I am going to go with a 2-1 loss. And that will be my prediction for this one. I still think, though, that we have every chance to get out of here with at least a point, if not more than that. So everybody, come join us, like I said, at Berry House, and we can all watch it together. Now, Nick, let's get into the extra time segment, and we can actually talk about that new signing that I had mentioned earlier. The Rowdies made another academy signing last week when Matias De Jesus joined on an academy contract. I think that everyone is going to hear me say De Jesus and think, are you sure that's how it's pronounced? In fact, it is, because the 18-year-old with Brazilian roots, as opposed to Spanish roots, or, well, Spanish-speaking country roots, moved here from Indy in 2022 and joined our academy. So this is awesome. This is something that Robbie Nielsen has really highlighted as one of his goals, to make sure that we get to be a bit of a younger team, at least with the addition of academy players. Christian Ortiz, of course, has signed his first professional contract. We already mentioned that. But this is more movement in that way, in that pattern, more movement down that road to actually making ourselves a full pathway into the professional game. And I think that that's very important.
I'd agree. I was kind of leaning in that earlier when I was talking about Scubas getting called up. This is something that's going to help this team in the future. We've had great teams in the past, but they've always been players we've brought in, guys kind of more on the older end, and people that, would make you worried that eventually we'd age out and we wouldn't be able to compete. This is something that can sustain success for the club for years to come. And for this only happening in year one of Coach Nielsen, I think that's an incredible thing. And I'm really interested to see how I'm really excited to see this guy come out and just see what he does on the pitch, because I hadn't had the opportunity to see any clips of him playing. So I'm excited to see what he can add. And I also just want to add, as a 21-year-old, the fact that this kid is 18 and he's playing pro soccer, and he's already farther ahead in life than I am, makes me think things, but we don't need to go into that.
Yes, well, as someone who's already out of college, I'm going to completely leave that conversation behind for the time being. That is not something that I need to think about right now. Additionally, with the Rowdies Academy, we need to highlight this. The academy signing and now professional signing, Christian Ortiz, is away because he is on international duty representing the Dominican Republic at the CONCACAF Under-20 Championship. That starts this Friday, although I believe the Dominican Republic's first game is, it's only Saturday, not that far off. Either way, please tune in if you can. I will be watching those games as much as I can. Christian Ortiz playing for the Dominican Republic is awesome. I believe he's originally from New York, but then he has family obviously from there. And him getting this call up is fantastic. He has earned his way into the first team. He has earned his way into a professional contract. We have seen him come this close to scoring. I will never forget how far I ran from my seat when I thought that I was already up and I was already celebrating when it just went wide. But we don't need to get into that. He's going to score for the Dominican Republic. I have no doubt about that coming up in this tournament. And congratulations to him on doing that.
I got nothing else to add, man. I got nothing else to add to that.
Well, yeah, we wish him all the best as well as all the other players down there. But having a Rowdies connection at the CONCACAF Under-20 Championship is pretty cool. Further congratulations are necessary, and they need to be sent out right now to Spain and Argentina on their Euro and Copa America wins, respectively. Fantastic team, fantastic tournament. In both instances, I would say that there were a couple of weird things that I would complain about in terms of the refereeing. Mostly it was better at the Euro, although not in the Scotland versus Hungary game. I'm not going to get into that right now. There was a lot worse refereeing at the Copa America, in my opinion. I'm not going to get further into that now. But I think at the end of the day, probably the two best teams won each tournament.
100%. Can't debate that. Spain's got a bright future considering they got a 16-year-old playing who's already one of their best players.
Yep.
And what a run by Argentina. Like, all those major trophies in that little amount of time. They're establishing themselves as probably one of the greatest run in international football. That's incredible. I feel like we need to talk about what happened before the Argentina match, though. Do we want to say, you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll tell you, it doesn't look good for the World Cup being hosted again in Miami and in America in just under 2 years' time. That is not the best start for us.
Oh my god, man, those videos. It's insane. I saw the initial report. People are like just trying to like run in, This has happened in football, unfortunately. It happened at like the Euro 2020 final where English fans try to storm into the Wembley. But then you're seeing videos of people climbing into the air duct.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. And in a weird way, I kind of respect that. Like, you love it that much. You're just trying to find any way to get in. But, I mean, it's insane. They have to make changes to prevent that from happening. It's not a good look on them. It's not a good look on the South American Football Federation, who was in charge of running that match.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, that kind of overshadowed the game. And that's such a shame because, I mean, what an accomplishment for Argentina. What was a pretty good game. But, man, I've never seen anything like that. It's just, it's been a few days since then, and I still can't get those images out of my head. I'm still stunned by them.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is literally stunning to see them for sure. The only thing that I would also say is that if this is the security problem that we're having for Copa America, it's not the first one that we've had at this Copa America. There was also the problem of all the Uruguayan family members apparently sitting in amongst a bunch of fans where they were possibly attacked, leading up to the Uruguayan players getting into the stands to physically protect their families with fists and their feet. That's crazy. I cannot believe that a situation like that has occurred in 2024. It's like surprising that there are things that are so disorganized at this level. And this is not to cast aspersions on anyone, but CONMEBOL has had to deal with crowd trouble in the past. These are heated rivalries between teams that know each other extremely well because it's only the 10 teams down in South America. They play each other all the time. All of the fans kind of hate all of the other fans. I get that from my own point of view, but you still cannot allow situations to occur where these security failures are popping up in multiple different places and in multiple different ways. And the head of the Colombian Federation being arrested as well for assault or battery or whichever it was during that game. It's just it's not a good look for so many different people involved.
No, 2 years to the World Cup, gotta figure it out because that cannot happen. Because let's not forget how many, like, you guys saw how expensive those tickets were, right? And so many of them either they couldn't get to their seats because of the overcrowding, and some people couldn't even get in the stadium. that's just not fair. And I hope those fans got refunded the ones they didn't get into the stadium, but I don't think they will be because this thing was such a just a huge mess. But that kind of stuff can't happen, especially like this is a soccer game. It's supposed to be fun to watch. It should not be. People should not be getting crushed to death.
Yeah,
that should not be happening.
And of course, it should be noted as well that this was a Copa America game, and not that Copa America isn't very prestigious and doesn't have a lot of history and everything, but the biggest tournament in the world is the World Cup. So there are going to be people who are probably wanting to get into those games even more than they wanted to get into this one.
Oh, yeah.
All things to take into consideration.
Probably the most prestigious event in the world, if not number one. So, yeah. If this was a World Cup game, I can only imagine the chaos that would have happened. Yeah. I don't think that Hard Rock Stadium would still be standing.
No, and they already dealt with apparently quite a bit of physical damage to the stadium. So, yeah, that's another thing to take into consideration.
There's photos of elevators being destroyed. Oh my, I just can't believe it. I'm even seeing rumors that apparently some fans try to get in through the sewers.
Oh, geez.
I know. You got to really love soccer to do that. But oh my God. I don't know. I wanted to bring that up, but I don't know how to respond to that at the same time.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia level stuff going on there.
that is definitely something that they would do in an episode to I don't know, into an Eagles game or something.
But with those two tournaments now ended, we turn our attention to the Olympics, where both the men's team and the women's team are taking part for the U.S. Carlos is usually here to bring up the Ecuadorian side, but I don't believe Ecuador has qualified. I don't remember off the top of my head, but at the meantime, the Olympics, like I said, that is where we turn our heads. I assume that it is the women's team who will be most likely to get anywhere near a podium, and I certainly hope that they do. The men's team, maybe not, but if they can turn in a better performance than the senior men's team at the Copa America, then we'll all be happy about it, won't we?
Uh-huh. I need a better performance than what we did at Copa, so I'm just begging, just win a couple more games and don't lose in that fashion.
Yeah. That would be embarrassing to have it happen twice in one summer. But folks, that is where we're going to leave it with one more reminder that you need to join us this weekend at Berry House. Again, the game is 7 p.m., but we will be there at 6 with a pregame show at 6:15. There will be a halftime swag giveaway as well as beer pitcher specials, award-winning beer from Berry House Beer Company, and I will tell you it is very good. They have options for everyone. I am the kind of person who likes dark beer personally, and it sucks for me when we go to different breweries around, and they mostly, during this time of season, only have IPAs because most people don't want to drink dark beers when it's 150 degrees outside. I understand that, but I still like a dark beer, and Berry House does have them. It's also not as hot inside as it would be, so that I don't even want to drink a dark beer. So just keep all that in mind and come get some halftime swag from our giveaway while we all cheer on the Rowdies from Tampa. That is the last time I will remind you, but you will see it also on our social media. Speaking of social media, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere that you are, we are as well at RBLR Sports. What about you, Nick? Where can they get you?
You can find me on Twitter at NickWorselli2 and on Instagram at NP Sports.
All right, perfect. And I am mostly on Twitter at this point. I am at RBLR James K. Please follow me there if you would like to get at me. You can do so and tell me why any of my takes on the Rowdies are wrong. I hope they're not. Hopefully you agree. But hey, we gotta drive content somehow. We gotta drive engagement, folks. Like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience, of course, on YouTube, which is where we would ask that you join us if you can. If not, no problem, because we are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Wherever you are, we are there too. For one more week and one more Rowdies win in the bag, and hopefully another one coming up on the road, on turf. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.